Welcome back to the Midnight Mine, where we study the truth while the world sleeps. If you're new here, please consider subscribing. And while you're at it, hit that like button for me. I really would appreciate it. Tonight, we're back in the Midnight Library for the Greatest Books series, where we explore the truths hidden by the world's most influential writers and thinkers. It's almost midnight, and tonight, we uncover the dark design of Hobbes' Leviathan. Have you ever wondered what would happen if the world simply stopped obeying? If the laws, the rules, the silent agreements that keep us civil suddenly evaporated overnight? Picture this. The morning sun rises as usual, but something invisible has been removed. There are no police, no courts, no governments, no fear of punishment, no social judgment, only desire, raw and unrestrained. Would people still be kind? Would your neighbour smile at you? Or would they barricade their doors and clutch their weapons in silence? The truth is, what we call society is little more than a fragile truce between instincts. Every handshake, every law, every polite smile in the street is a contract, not written on paper, but etched in fear. We behave because we believe others will. We cooperate because we assume others will do the same. But beneath that delicate surface lies something older, something far less humane. The primal hunger for power, survival, and control. The veil we call civilization is thinner than we dare admit. If that veil tore even slightly, chaos would not slowly creep in, it would flood the world like a broken dam. You can see glimpses of it already. The panic that erupts when systems fail, the desperation that emerges when food runs out or authority disappears. During blackouts, riots, or collapses, the calm mask of civility is stripped away. Suddenly, the civilized person and the savage are one and the same, both ruled by instinct, both desperate to live another day. Centuries ago, Thomas Hobbes looked at humanity without illusion. While others dreamed of virtue and progress, Hobbes saw something darker pulsating beneath it. To him, human beings were not noble creatures guided by reason or morality, but animals driven by fear. Fear of death, fear of loss, fear of the unknown. He believed that if left to their own devices, stripped of authority and order, people would descend into what he called the state of nature. A condition where life is solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. It was not poetry, it was prophecy. Hobbes lived through civil war, a time when his world fell apart, when trust evaporated and blood replaced law. He watched neighbours turn on neighbours, families destroy themselves for survival. What he saw convinced him that civilization was not the natural state of man, but a fragile invention designed to cage something monstrous. He saw the truth, that peace is not our birthright, it is our bargain. The moment we forget that, the beast beneath stirs again. Think of how easily our modern comforts could vanish. The food in your supermarket depends on invisible systems of cooperation. Millions of strangers working together because they trust in the rules that bind them. The internet that carries your thoughts across the world depends on shared codes and maintained order. The currency in your hand is only valuable because others believe it is. All of it, every connection, every transaction, every form of peace, depends on the collective hallucination that the contract still holds. Break that trust, and the world falls back to its natural state, conflict. But here lies the haunting paradox. To escape that chaos, we willingly surrender something sacred, our freedom. Hobbes argued that in order to live in peace, people must hand over some of their autonomy to a higher power, the Leviathan, a sovereign authority that keeps the wolves at bay. In return, this Leviathan promises security. It enforces order, punishes betrayal, and ensures that our selfish instincts do not consume us entirely. In essence, we trade a portion of our freedom for the illusion of safety. And most of us accept this without question. We obey laws not because we are moral, but because we fear the consequences of disobedience. We follow norms, not because they are right, but because defying them isolates us from the group. What Hobbes saw, and what few dare to confront, is that freedom and peace cannot coexist completely. The freer we are, the closer we drift towards the chaos of the natural state. The more secure we become, the more chains we accept around our will. Every civilization must choose its balance between the two, and most of us never realize we are choosing at all. Look closely at your daily life. You think you're free because you can choose what to buy, where to go, and what to post. But your choices are already framed by invisible structures, laws, algorithms, social approval, economic necessity. Even your rebellion is permitted, contained within the limits of what the system can absorb. Freedom, in this sense, becomes a kind of performance. We act autonomous, but we are only ever playing within the walls of the Leviathan's domain. Still, Hobbes was not wrong to demand this surrender. He understood something many modern thinkers ignore, that humans are not peaceful by default. Without restraint, the pursuit of individual freedom would lead to universal insecurity. One person's liberty is another's threat. One man's freedom to act becomes another's fear of being harmed. To avoid that endless cycle of conflict, we submit to power. We build states, governments, hierarchies. Not out of virtue, but out of exhaustion. We're too afraid of what would happen without them. Yet every generation forgets this bargain. We begin to believe that the structures protecting us are natural, permanent, and benign. We stop questioning the price we pay for order. And then, when those structures fail, we're shocked. As if the darkness beneath civilization is new. It never is. It was only sleeping. History has already shown us what happens when the contract weakens. In every collapse, Rome, Weimar, Yugoslavia, Rwanda, the descent into madness was not sudden, it was gradual, almost invisible, until one day it was everywhere. The veneer of law peeled away, and ordinary people, teachers, shopkeepers, neighbours, became executioners. Hobbes would have looked at those moments and said, this is the real face of freedom. When the leash is cut, the beast remembers its power. So ask yourself, how far would you go if all restraint vanished? If there were no eyes to judge you, no punishment to fear, no moral order left to hold you back? Most people prefer not to answer. They assume they would remain good, compassionate, civilized. But deep down, they know, as Hobbes knew, that goodness is often a luxury of safety. Take away that safety, and what emerges is not virtue, but will. We often dream of freedom as pure good, the right to think, speak, act without limits. But Hobbes forces us to confront a darker truth, that unrestrained freedom is indistinguishable from chaos. And perhaps this is why we cling so desperately to our governments, our laws, our leaders, not because they are just, but because they promise to keep the darkness from spilling into our streets. We don't worship authority because it's moral, we worship it because it keeps us alive. As you move through your day, walking past strangers, obeying traffic lights, trusting that others will too, remember this: the peace you experience is not natural. It's a fragile miracle built on fear and agreement. Every second, every smile, every law-abiding moment is an act of collective restraint against the chaos waiting just beneath the surface. Civilization is not the opposite of war, it's the pause between them. And somewhere in that pause lies the truth about freedom, that what we call liberty is often the luxury of those who have forgotten the cost of order. The Leviathan watches, silent and immense, reminding us that our peace is borrowed, our safety conditional, and our freedom never absolute. You don't remember signing the contract, but you live by it every day. It dictates when you speak, how you move, what you desire, and what you dare not say aloud. This contract is invisible, not a piece of paper, but a set of silent rules woven through every interaction, every law, every unspoken expectation. Thomas Hobbes called it the social contract, the unholy pact we make to trade the chaos of freedom for the safety of order. And though you never signed your name, your obedience is your signature. From the moment you were born, the Leviathan began shaping you. It taught you to wait your turn, to apologize, to obey, to follow. It rewarded compliance and punished rebellion, molding you into a citizen who functions not by instinct, but by consent. This is not oppression, it's conditioning. The system doesn't need chains when it has belief. Hobbes understood that the greatest power is not the sword, but the mind that willingly kneels before it. Look around, and you'll see the invisible contract everywhere. You pay taxes, even if you disagree with how they're used. You stop at red lights, even when the street is empty. You censor your words online, not because the police will come for you, although they might, but because you fear social exile. These are not minor acts of obedience. They're the foundation of civilization itself. Without them, everything collapses, but with them, something else is lost. The wild, untamed spark that once defined what it meant to be truly free. Hobbes believed that without authority, humans would destroy each other. But in building authority, we created a new kind of destruction, the slow erosion of individuality. We became safe, but predictable, peaceful, but passive. The Leviathan doesn't need to roar, it whispers in the language of comfort. It tells you that safety is worth the cost of silence, that peace is worth the price of obedience. And most of us agree, because rebellion is terrifying when you've been taught that order is your only protection. Modern life is proof that Hobbes' vision still rules us. Every institution, every government, every algorithmic platform operates on the same principle. Trade your freedom for convenience, and we'll protect you from the chaos beyond. You're told what to think of as dangerous, what to trust as truth, what to reject as extreme. You obey not because you're forced to, but because you're conditioned to believe that obedience is survival. The Leviathan no longer stands outside of us, it lives within us. This is the hidden genius of power. It no longer needs to command, it only needs to persuade. In Hobbes' time, kings ruled with fear of death. Today, rulers govern through comfort, distraction, and digital dependency. We surrender privacy for efficiency, autonomy for convenience, and willpower for entertainment. The cage has become beautiful. So beautiful we forget it's a cage at all. When Hobbes wrote Leviathan, he imagined a single sovereign, a vast, artificial being made from all the wills of the people combined. This creature would protect them, govern them, and in return, they would offer loyalty and obedience. But the modern Leviathan is not one being. It's 1,000 institutions, laws, and invisible systems, all working in concert. It's the government that taxes you, the corporations that watch you, the social networks that shape what you believe. Together they form an intelligence larger than any single person, an organism that feeds on our consent. You may think that you're free because you can criticize the system, but notice how every rebellion quickly becomes a brand, every protest a trend, every voice of dissent absorbed back into the machine. The Leviathan doesn't crush rebellion, it consumes it. Its power lies not in oppression, but in assimilation. The more you resist it within its boundaries, the stronger it becomes. This was Hobbes' paradox, and it remains ours. We cannot live without the Leviathan, but we cannot live fully within it. The social contract protects us from the worst of human nature, yet it also binds the best of it. Our creativity, our courage, our will to power, all must be filtered through what society deems acceptable. The instinct to dominate becomes ambition. The desire to rebel becomes expression. The hunger for freedom becomes a slogan printed on a t-shirt. The wildness of the human spirit is neatly packaged and sold back to us as identity. And yet, there are cracks in this vast machine. Hobbes' world depended on a shared belief that authority was legitimate, that the sovereign was necessary. But what happens when that faith erodes? When people no longer trust their institutions? When the system itself becomes the threat it was designed to prevent? The modern world trembles under this question. Economic instability, political polarization, and the collapse of shared truth are not random. They are symptoms of a social contract unraveling. Each day, more people feel alienated from the system they once trusted. They see governments act in self-interest, corporations manipulate truth, and digital empires rewrite reality. The old Hobbesian fear, the terror of chaos, begins to fade, replaced by a new fear, that the Leviathan no longer serves the people, but consumes them. When trust dies, obedience falters, and when obedience falters, the contract breaks. But Hobbes would remind us, breaking the contract doesn't bring liberation, it brings war. He would point to history and say, look, every revolution, every collapse, every utopian dream becomes a nightmare when the structure falls. He would tell us that the alternative to submission is not freedom, but violence. The social contract may be suffocating, but the absence of it is annihilation. Still, the human spirit rebels. Deep within, we long for authenticity, to act without permission, to speak without fear, to live without compromise. This is the tension at the heart of every civilization, the yearning for freedom against the need for control. We oscillate between the two, never fully at peace with either. Hobbes' Leviathan offers security, but it also demands our souls, and most of us, exhausted by uncertainty, give them willingly. To see the Leviathan clearly is to awaken to an uncomfortable truth, that much of what you call you is a construction of the system that contains you. Your opinions are moulded by media. Your values are inherited from culture. Even your sense of morality, what you call right or wrong, was shaped long before you could question it. The social contract doesn't just keep us safe, it defines the boundaries of who we're allowed to be. Yet knowing this doesn't free you from it. Awareness is not escape. It's the first step towards responsibility. To see your chains clearly is to begin to decide which ones you will carry and which ones you'll break. The Leviathan cannot be destroyed, but it can be understood, and in understanding there lies power, the power to navigate its grip without being entirely consumed by it. So we live within the contract, conscious now of its cost. We obey, but we watch. We participate, but we question. We bend, but we do not kneel completely. Because somewhere between chaos and control lies a fragile balance, the narrow path where true freedom can still breathe, even under the shadow of the Leviathan. There's a quiet unease running through the modern world right now, a vibration beneath the surface, like a tremor before an earthquake. You can feel it in the distrust that seeps through every conversation, in the anger that fills every digital thread, in the sense that something once solid is starting to come undone. The social contract that Hobbes imagined, the agreement that once bound humanity together, is beginning to fracture. We can no longer agree on what is true, what is good, or even who we are supposed to trust. And in that confusion, the shadow of the state of nature returns, not with swords and spears, but through screens and symbols. The Leviathan, once mighty and unquestioned, now bleeds from 1,000 cuts. Governments stumble under the weight of corruption and division. Institutions, once sacred, are met with skepticism. Even science, reason and shared facts, the pillars of modern order, are being pulled into the undertow of doubt. We're now entering an age that Hobbes could not have foreseen, one where chaos no longer comes from the collapse of power, but from its multiplication. The digital age has given every voice a platform, every opinion a stage, and every mind a weapon. The result is not freedom, but noise. Hobbes feared the war of all against all. What we face now is subtler, the war of every truth against every other. The battlefield is not the wasteland, but the mind. Every algorithm feeds our desires, amplifies our fears, and isolates us within the comfort of our own convictions. The social contract depended on shared reality, but shared reality requires shared trust, and that trust is dissolving. The Leviathan no longer rules us through fear of death, but through distraction and division. We're not subjects of tyranny, we are citizens of confusion. When the contract weakens, people instinctively seek new forms of order. Some turn to ideology, others to identity, and still others to conspiracy. We look for leaders who promise to restore certainty, to make the chaos make sense. But those promises always come with a price. Every false saviour demands the same trade Hobbes described centuries ago: your freedom for their protection, your individuality for their authority. And once again, we obey, not because they deserve it, but because the alternative, true freedom, feels unbearable. There's a reason for that. Freedom is not comfortable. It's a burden. To be free is to carry the full weight of your choices, your failures, your destiny. Most people don't want that. They prefer the illusion of freedom inside the cage of order. They call it peace, but it's submission. Nietzsche understood this when he wrote that man would rather will nothingness than not will at all. We would rather surrender our will to systems, ideologies, and authorities than confront the terrifying abyss of being truly responsible for ourselves. The Leviathan survives not because it is strong, but because we are afraid of what lies without it. And yet, there are always those who awaken, who see the cracks and don't look away. They begin to sense that the ultimate prison is not political, but psychological. The bars are built from comfort, conformity, and fear. These individuals start to reclaim their freedom, not by destroying the Leviathan, but by refusing to be defined by it. They learn to think dangerously, not in violence, but in independence. They recognize that obedience is not evil, but unexamined obedience is. They understand that order is necessary, but when order becomes absolute, it devours the soul. Freedom, in its truest form, begins internally. It's the ability to hold one's own mind against the gravity of the collective. It's to think clearly when the world screams for simplicity. It's to act according to one's conscience, even when doing so invites punishment or isolation. Jung called this process individuation, the long and difficult journey of becoming who you truly are, not who the world expects you to be. In a world built on contracts and conformity, individuation is an act of rebellion. It's the declaration that your soul is not property of the Leviathan. But such freedom is not romantic. It's perilous. To stand apart from the herd is to face the cold truth that you cannot rely on it for validation or safety. The herd protects, but it also enslaves. Hobbes warned of chaos beyond the walls, but Jung warned of the spiritual death within them. Between the two lies the narrow path of the awakened mind, neither surrendering to chaos nor dissolving into obedience. To walk this path is to live deliberately, aware of both your fragility and your power. So, how do we begin to reclaim this inner freedom? It starts with observation. Notice when you repeat ideas that are not your own. Notice when fear makes you obedient, when comfort silences your curiosity. Notice how often you conform to avoid judgment, not because you believe. Every small act of awareness weakens the Leviathan's hold within you. Freedom isn't seized all at once. It's reclaimed moment by moment, thought by thought. To live consciously in an unconscious age is in itself an act of defiance. Still, Hobbes' warning must not be forgotten. The collapse of order is no path to enlightenment. The goal is not anarchy, but integration. To live within structure without being swallowed by it. The Leviathan is necessary, but it must never become sacred. Its authority must always be questioned, its power always held to account. True freedom is not the rejection of all constraint, but the ability to discern which constraints are worth keeping. It's to obey what is wise and resist what is corrupt. It's to stand between chaos and tyranny, balanced on the knife's edge of responsibility. We will never escape the need for order. The Leviathan will always exist in some form, as government, as culture, as the invisible web of human cooperation. But we can decide what kind of creature it becomes. Will it remain a guardian, or will it turn into a god? The answer depends on us, on whether we continue to surrender thought for comfort, or dare to think freely even when it costs us belonging. The future of freedom is not written in laws or constitutions. It's written in the courage of individual minds that refuse to be lulled back to sleep. So, the question remains, how much of your freedom have you traded without noticing? How much of your silence has been purchased with safety? Hobbes's ghost still lingers, whispering that peace requires submission. But perhaps he was only half right. Perhaps the real peace comes not from obedience, but from self-mastery, from knowing the darkness within and choosing not to unleash it. The Leviathan's rule ends where your awareness begins. The herd will always obey. Authority will always command. But you have the rare chance to awaken, to see the contract for what it is, to accept the cost of order without surrendering the essence of your will. Freedom was never meant to be comfortable. It was meant to be dangerous, the kind of danger that keeps the soul alive. So, walk carefully, but walk awake. The Leviathan watches, but it no longer owns you. Well, that's it for this episode of The Midnight Mind. If you enjoyed it, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It really helps me out. Please let me know what you think in the comments down below. I always enjoy hearing your perspectives. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.